to be perfectly honest, I'd like nothing better than to get Donald Trump and Melania Trump under oath in front of a court reporter and actually find out all of the details of their relationship with Epstein.
I just want to point out, and I want to review from things that happened before to things that are happening right now that's part of this entire cover-up. With this in mind, don't forget this part because I feel like we forget it sometimes. Donald Trump's closest confidants in his cabinet, from J.D. Vance to Kash Patel to Pam Bondi to his chief of staff, I always forget her name, and J.D. Vance, they had this meeting planned where they're trying to figure how they're going to strategize ways to avoid, or I guess, strategize ways to keep this Epstein thing under cover.
Top Trump officials were set to attend a dinner at the vice president's residence at the Naval Observatory this evening. On the menu, a strategy discussion on how to handle fallout from the administration's own handling of the Epstein files. Now, after intense coverage, officials tell CNN that the dinner is now in flux. In fact, some people in the Trump administration say this dinner was never actually going to happen.
Well, Jake, I do want to clarify a little bit here because so many sources inside of the White House and inside of Vice President Vance's orbit had told us that this meeting existed. And no one is actually denying that they were going to have dinner tonight. What they're denying is that there was a meeting set to talk about Epstein's strategy. They are being very careful with how they parse these words. And because of the coverage, because of the fact that there was so much focus on the Epstein portion of this meeting or of this dinner, that is why it is now in flux.
But one of those people that's been exposing everything with Jeffrey Epstein is Michael Wolff. He's been getting threats. Here's his first part of his response to those threats.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Wolff. I've written 4 books about Donald Trump. And also before his death, I extensively interviewed Jeffrey Epstein, not least of all about his relationship with Donald Trump. I've spoken publicly about aspects of those interviews, including the things Epstein said about his relationship with both Donald Trump and Melania Trump. Several days ago, I was notified by lawyers for the First Lady that they intend to sue me for $1 billion for some of those statements. Now, they've threatened and sued other people for related statements about Melania Trump's relationship with Epstein. These are called slap suits. They may have no hope whatsoever of proving defamation, but these suits are filed anyway, or these suits are threatened to intimidate people from talking about this exact subject.
Slap suits. So as, again, Michael Wolff, author who's written extensively and has spoken even more extensively about the things he's heard, experienced, and had long interviews with Jeffrey Epstein, which we're going to get to some of in a second. But this was his response to Melania Trump demanding $1 billion in what he called a slap suit in order to intimidate him from continuing to talk.
I can't live like that. In fact, to be perfectly honest, I'd like nothing better than to get Donald Trump and Melania Trump under oath in front of a court reporter and actually find out all of the details of their relationship with Epstein. Turning the tables on the Trumps and refusing to acquiesce to them. Last night, my lawyers went into court in New York and asked for a declaratory judgment. In other words, we will have subpoena power to call witnesses and to find out exactly what the relationship between Epstein and the Trumps was. Now, this is going to be an expensive effort, and I'm going to reach out and for everyone's support. But I think that this is going to be also a very fruitful way to finally open this dark curtain and find out what Donald Trump, Melania Trump, and Jeffrey Epstein were doing together.
This might get real bad. They keep getting cornered. Don't forget, Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He barks and expects people to run. They're coming, apparently threatened to come for Michael Wolff here, but he has ideas and plans in place. I mean, it could get really bad. This is some of the stuff that Michael Wolff has talked about in the past on some interviews and written in books that he had seen and experienced when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump.
Know that these pictures exist, and I can describe them. There are about a dozen of them. The ones I specifically remember is two of them with topless girls of an uncertain age sitting on Trump's lap, and then Trump standing there with a stain on the front of his pants, and 3 or 4 girls kind of bent over in laughter. They're topless too, pointing at Trump's pants.
As I said, there's plenty of graphic descriptions of what it is that people accuse Donald Trump of doing, along with who he once called Jeffrey Epstein, one of his really good friends. But maybe you don't want to believe Michael Wolff. I get it. You know, you love Donald Trump. Maybe you don't want to believe him. But did you hear what Pam Bondi had to say when she was trying to wiggle her way out of answering questions about the things that we've seen and heard about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein?
Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay.
So there she sat frozen as Sheldon Whitehouse asked the question again and completely ignored her weird deflections that she had written down on scribble notes on her binder to make sure that she could deflect from the questions that she absolutely didn't want to answer. That's the Attorney General of the United States, whose primary job here is to help cover up for the Epstein files. She's probably gonna be the next to be like, I please don't put me in front of any more cameras to defend these questions, this type of behavior, because as I mentioned before, and I'm gonna go through a few more examples, Michael Wolff has been all over the place exposing this guy.
I urged Epstein. I said, you should release these pictures. I mean, if for no other reason, I mean, and Epstein was already in trouble and already a figure which people were. He was already demonized. I said, maybe this will even help you. You can be on the side of right here. And I remember Epstein said, again, chilling at the time, he said, I may be a pervert, but I'm not crazy. And then he said, Trump is a man without any scruples.
The guy who's no longer on this earth. The guy who also self-admitted to being a pervert, but he's not crazy enough to cross Donald Trump, who has zero scruples. There's a reason why Melania Trump was going after Michael Wolff and why he's inviting it. So another clip from Michael Wolff. Like I said, I went real extensive and deep with this stuff because I want to have the full reminder for everyone to see what it is that these guys are covering up.
Now, this is a key issue right now in the way the White House is looking at the Epstein scandal. The fear is that Ghislaine Maxwell can tie Donald Trump to the details of what Trump and Epstein called the committee. The committee consisted of Trump and Epstein in their efforts to get girls for Prince Andrew.
We all heard about the Prince Andrew allegations, again, which came from Virginia Giuffre, the woman who died earlier this year, which I think was through some pretty questionable means. But, they say that she committed suicide. How much can you dispute it when you don't know and you're not there? But they brought up Prince Andrew. He brought up that situation with what Donald Trump and potentially Jeffrey Epstein were plotting and thinking together and getting him girls. Did you guys know that Virginia Giuffre just had a book that came out today, or was it yesterday? I'm looking to read it. They say there's a lot of horrific details in it, but it's a memoir about her life, not just the abuse that she had, but also how she got to the place that she was. Anderson Cooper first started off this segment talking about what it is that he saw in Virginia Giuffre's book, since we were talking about Prince Andrew.
Giuffre died by suicide earlier this year, but she documented the abuse she suffered at the hands of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Quoting now from the book, "Just when I thought things couldn't get worse for me, they did. Epstein trafficked me to a man who raped me more savagely than anyone had before. We were on Epstein's island when I was ordered to take this man to a cabana. Immediately it was clear that this man, whom I've taken pains to describe in legal filings only as a well-known prime minister, wasn't interested in caresses. He wanted violence. He repeatedly choked me until I lost consciousness and took pleasure in seeing me in fear for my life." About Prince Andrew, she writes, quote, "I hadn't wanted to have sex with the prince, I said, but I felt I had to. Our livelihoods depended on it for one thing, but I also truly believed there was no way for me to free myself from Epstein and Maxwell's grip."
I really do think this is the beginning of the end. If it gets to that point, if they're not successful in this cover-up. There was lots of stuff that they went over with, but the one clip I want to get to from this interview with Anderson Cooper and the co-author of this book with Virginia Giuffre is them talking about Ghislaine Maxwell as well. Remember, they're telling us that there's no connection between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. That is until we see all these connections between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. They tell us that Virginia Giuffre killed herself and, she was just upset at her life. And then they want us to not believe that the things we've seen, the connections between him, Ghislaine Maxwell, and all of the stuff that he's concerned about isn't stuff that we've experienced and seen. But first, here's that co-author talking about how Virginia Giuffre may feel about all this talk about how great of a person Ghislaine Maxwell is from this MAGA party.
There's a lot of blame placed on Maxwell in addition to Epstein. I mean, she said at one point that she saw them as two halves of a wicked whole. I wonder, what do you think she would make of Maxwell now being moved to this other, less secure, cozier prison?
Well, I think she would be aghast at the moving her to basically a club fed. It's a minimum security prison. She would also be aghast at the idea that anyone is considering possibly pardoning this woman. She's not only a proven sexual predator, she's been convicted in a court of law of being involved in the whole sexual trafficking scheme. So this book makes clear that Ghislaine Maxwell was not just the receptionist that kept the notes on when the next girl was going to come, and not just a procurer, although she did procure, and that was in itself evil, but she also sexually abused these young girls herself. She said to them repeatedly, "Come over here and sexually service me." She hurt them. Virginia describes a scene where Ghislaine hurt her during sex with a variety of ghastly sex tools to make her pay for something that Ghislaine was angry at her about. So this woman is an abuser in her own right. And the fact that anyone is even bandying about the idea that she might be pardoned is just unthinkable.
You know who was ranting and raving about how they might be pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell?
Mr. President, you completely rule out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell when you landed. Is that something you would ever consider, and why?
Pardon for who?
For Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, I'm allowed to give her a pardon, but nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. It's in the news about that aspect of it, but right now it would be inappropriate to talk about it.
Ghislaine Maxwell serving 20 years in prison for sex trafficking. Is clemency on the table for her in exchange for testimony?
I'm allowed to do it, but nobody's asked me to do it. I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about the case, but I know I have the right to do it. I have the right to give pardons. I've given pardons to people before, but nobody's even asked me to do it.
The Supreme Court is back, and they rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance of getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're...
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. But I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
When asked directly and told directly, well, in case you forgot, since you have no idea apparently who Ghislaine Maxwell is, since you forgot and you haven't heard her name in so long, that's that woman that was convicted, has been sent off to prison, that you then, sent to a minimum security prison camp instead. That woman was convicted of child sex trafficking ring. Well, I'd have to think about it. What is there to think about still? Who's there to still talk to? I'm not sure if he realizes how bad that looks, but he said it over and over and over again. And the only time Donald Trump is committed so hardcore to making sure that he's looking to protect someone is if he feels that they have maybe something on him. Hey, that same guy that they want to sue for $1 billion, Michael Wolff, he had something to say about the reasons behind all of this fealty and softness towards Ghislaine Maxwell.
In the White House, they believe that the story in the Wall Street Journal about the birthday greeting that Donald Trump, the salacious birthday greeting that Donald Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein in 2003 on the occasion of his 50th birthday was a leak from the Maxwell family. And in the White House, they regarded this as, quote, a shot across the bow. So a threat, if that Ghislaine had damaging material on Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's lawyer, who, as it happens, is also the number 2 in the United States Justice Department, but principally is Donald Trump's own lawyer, went down, and I expect to try to figure out exactly what Ghislaine Maxwell has, and then they would figure out how they might have to handle that.
And when that number 2 in the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's personal attorney, went down to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell, I just want to recap for you guys. It ended with her going to a minimum security prison, her having this long conversation with him, and all these things probably, I guess, we can only assume a demands list. Because we're supposed to forget about her. We're supposed to forget that happened. We're supposed to forget that legal experts and people that do this stuff for a living said this is the most odd movement of a high-level sex trafficking ringleader we've ever seen. This doesn't happen for this high level of a convict that's done these things. It doesn't happen. All the way back to what we started with. This government remains shut down. Mike Johnson continues to not want, and the rest of these Republicans who are tabling and ending these sessions early, why they don't want to swear in Adelita Grijalva, why Donald Trump wants Thomas Massie removed immediately, as he said, it's because they're afraid and they're cornered. Last thing about Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump's fear about what she may say. Here's Maggie Haberman.
You wrote that President Trump was asking about Ghislaine Maxwell during the first term after, she was arrested. What exactly did he want to know?
Sure. So there was this moment, as you remember, John, at a coronavirus briefing where the president said that then president said that he wished her well when he was asked about her arrest, and that confused even some of his own allies what exactly that meant. Later, a couple of days later, I believe it was, in an Oval Office meeting with some advisors, he was talking about a New York Post item he had seen where someone was quoted talking about whom Ghislaine Maxwell might have information about, and I think they were suggesting that she did. The president asked advisors if they had seen that item and then said, "She say anything about me?" And, again, this is something that, as he says, he's not really following it. It's a witch hunt. At some point, it was on his mind.
Did she say anything about me? As Glenn Maxwell was talking about the people that she could potentially implicate, did she mention me? This really, as I said before, and I said it 12 times, this is the worst thing that they could allow to have happen. And not just because of Donald Trump, because of all the high level, powerful people that always felt they could get away with this stuff, because they have. They just have. It crosses administrations. It crosses Democratic presidents. It crossed Republican presidents. They don't care. They always had this. And now it's landed on Donald Trump's desk. Ironically, the guy who said, "We're going to release the files." That's how confident he was that he could continue to force people to forget all about it and say, "You guys don't need to think about that anymore. I got elected now." My whole purpose for saying that was to fool enough of you into thinking that I cared about this when in fact, I'm potentially all up in there. So let's keep asking questions and let's see how they continue to respond, because every response so far has been horrible and has been looking like they're guilty as sin.